Kind of big question mark around the Raiders. I thought the Raiders played hard. Antonio Pierce is going to get a quarterback. Who knows who it's going to be? With that, Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter, Monday Morning Quarterback, joins us. So let's start with the Jets. I don't think Rex Ryan is crazy. I would prefer Ben Johnson, but I just heard a story he's not interviewing. I can read the tea leaves. You have sourcing on this. What do you hear?
Yeah, he isn't interviewing there, and I think Ben Johnson's going to be picky about where he does interview. I think it's significant that he's decided to take the interviews, at least for now, with the Bears and Patriots. Look, the Jets search is going to be wide-ranging. I think there's specific things that they're going to be looking for in their next head coach. You see offensive coaches, defensive coaches on the list. You've already seen general manager candidates go through there. There are going to be more. They want somebody with some level of experience, and they want somebody who can handle the market and handle everything that comes along with coaching and leading that franchise, and maybe even embraces it. And I think that's one reason why Rex Ryan would be attractive, is because I do think he'd embrace the idea of coaching there, of being in New York, of all of that stuff. So, I'd expect them to continue to wade through the coaching candidates, the GM candidates, pick one person, whether it's a coach or a GM, and then build out around that person.
Okay, Bears, I am reluctant to give somebody a job that's never been a head coach. It's a political job. Pete Carroll and Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn, I like a tough taskmaster, an intense guy. What say you on that one?
Yeah, there's definitely a recognition that they need more than one person to fix it. And that this isn't like a guy who's going to come in and just develop the quarterback and that's it. It's going to have to be a whole lot more than that, because they haven't won a playoff game in 14 years. And I think if they look in the mirror, that's what they'll find is that there are issues there that go deeper than just one coach or how just one player is developed. So, I think what we'll be looking at here is first, the leader of men box has to be checked. And that's why Vrabel or Aaron Glenn have been attractive to them. And I think both those guys will interview there. But, as they've seen over the last 6 weeks, and how Caleb has kind of been up and down and all around, if they do bring in a guy who's a leader of men who works on the defensive side, that person's going to have to come in with a very clear, concise plan for the quarterback, and not just for the next year or two, but going forward. If you lose an offensive coach, how do you replace him? All of that stuff. So, again, I think leadership's going to be really important there. Ben Johnson, again, is going to take an interview there. He's going to have to give them a leadership plan where some other coaches might have to detail a quarterback plan. And then I think part of it's going to be how that person fits into their structure. With the decision to keep Ryan Poles there are a lot of questions about Kevin Warren, the team president's involvement in all of this. And that's a big reason why the McCaskies have chosen to have Ryan Poles, not Kevin Warren, run point on the search. But clearly, whoever it is coming in, they want that person to fit into what they're already doing there.
Okay, Gerard Mayo, I didn't love it. I said when he got hired, it's a different chapter in the same book. I thought it was a lot to ask. It's a bad roster. Vrabel feels right. He's got a relationship with Kraft. They can be a bit frugal. The roster's not good. Mike has a real opinion on personnel. I think that helps. He knows it. Certain coaches are really good with it. Yeah. Andy Reid doesn't really care about it. Sean Payton wants to say, so does Harbaugh. Vrabel to the Patriots feels like a good fit, doesn't it?
It certainly makes sense, but Vrabel's going to have interest from a lot of places because I think when he walks in the door, he's a top 10 coach in the league. Now, you have to sort through what he's going to do on the offensive side of the ball. Is that a Tommy Rees? Is that a Josh McDaniels? He's got his list of people, but there's no question that he checks a lot of boxes, and that's why there's interest in him across the NFL. The Raiders are one team he's been consistently connected to. The Cowboys, if they make a change, I would expect them to have an interest. The Bears have an interest. The Jets have already interviewed him. So he's going to have options, and I don't think he's going to be sentimental about this. After what happened to him in Tennessee, my feeling is he's going to take a cold, hard look at what a team is going to present him. The Patriots do have some things to sell, though. The 4th overall pick, $120 million in cap space, a quarterback in Drake May, who a lot of coaches really, really like, ownership with a track record of support and success. So, I think that there's a lot to like about the Vrabel Patriot marriage. I think the issue there, Colin, is they haven't been through a real coaching search in 25 years. Last year was sort of open and shut. So I know that the Kraft family would like to take a look at what's out there. hear from a bunch of different people, get a better understanding of what's happening across the league with even if it does lead them back to Vrabel, sort of what the Chargers did last year in interviewing as many people as they did before they landed on Jim Harbaugh.
Okay, let's talk players. Aaron Rodgers, he played well in most of the last 8 weeks. I know. I think he's got a market. Am I nuts?
Yeah.
I'm nuts.
No, I don't think you're nuts. I would say this, like, Aaron told me over the summer, part of the reason he came back in 2024 was he didn't want to go out like that, right? Like, he didn't want to go out like in a heap on the turf at the Meadowlands with the Achilles injury. I'd argue that's a better way to go out than the way he'd be going out now, So my guess is he's still got some juice left and he still wants to play. He could come back like Brett Favre came back after what happened with his year with the Jets and playing in Minnesota and being an MVP candidate the next year. If he comes back with that sort of motivation wherever it is, I think Rodgers still has it in him to be a successful player. Here's the other thing that I think affects all that. The draft class doesn't look great. I mean, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, I think would clearly be behind the top 3 quarterbacks in last year's draft, and maybe all 6 that went in the first round. There are going to be teams that are going to look at this year's draft class saying and some at least are going to say there's not a first rounder in there. So I think for certain teams, Aaron Rodgers could be an effective bridge.
Yeah.
How would he look in Cleveland, Colin? How would he look in Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh's interesting.
I think that there are some teams out there that would make some sense, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I think listen, if Vegas played their way out of a good pick, and I don't think these quarterbacks are worth giving away draft capital to move up. I think there's guys like McCord at Syracuse or Riley Leonard who will be available in the second, and I think people will say, hey, we're going to sit them for a year. They're not quite as explosive. I would not give up a lot of draft capital. I'll do it for a Caleb. I'll do it for certain guys. These quarterbacks I would not.
How about this, Colin? I would tell you right here, right now, I think no question about it, the first 3 quarterbacks in last year's draft, right? Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May would all without question be the number 1 overall pick this year.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Let me stay with the Packers. Jordan Love, Christian Watson. The news is bad on Watson. What's the vibe going into this team that now is suddenly banged up at key spots?
Well, this is sort of why they invested in Josh Jacobs. Like, obviously down the stretch last year, Jordan Love was a little bit up and down, and he can be streaky.
Yes.
Right? And we've seen that. They really felt like in adding Josh Jacobs, they would bring a real edge, a physicality, and attitude to their running game. And I would argue, even when Love was out in September, go back and look at the numbers. When everyone in the building knew they were going to run it, they could still run it when Malik Willis was playing quarterback. So, it sucks losing Christian Watson. There's no question about that. That said, they do have some depth at the position in guys like Wicks and Reed and Dobbs. And so there are guys there that Love's got a great rapport with. And I do think if they go through some more ups and downs because they lost Watson, they now have something to lean back on in that running game. So, I really believe in like adding, Josh Jacobs, even a guy like Tucker Kraft, who's a devastating blocker as a tight end. They've sort of changed the face of that offense and believe that they're going to be able to go into the playoffs with an ability to play a little bit more consistently than they had last year.
Finally, I like that Brian Daboll and Shane Steichen were retained. Daboll in particular, he got a win late in the season that helped him. Was this a tough decision? Was it a go either way decision a week ago that Daboll's staying?
Yeah, John Mara wanted to hear the plan out. I think he had some sympathy for the position they were in. They were put in a really tough spot with the Hard Knocks thing too. I mean, make no mistake about it. Having the Saquon thing following you around all year, having the Daniel Jones situation play out the way that it did, where the kid's confidence was killed, maybe in part by his future being aired out on national TV. There's been a lot of missteps in that organization over the last couple of years, but I think John Mara really believed that what they did a couple of years ago was not smoke and mirrors. And there's a good core of young players there. If you look at it, and you and I have talked about this, right? Andrew Thomas, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence might have been Defensive Player of the Year this year. A guy like Malik Neighbors added to the receiver group. I don't think it's crazy to think that if you can get quarterback right, and now it's not going to be easy, but if you can find a way to get quarterback right, this thing could turn pretty quickly. So there's going to be pressure on those guys to win, but I think this is an acknowledgement that when those guys came in, there was a long way to go. 2022 was way ahead of schedule. The real rebuild took place the next 2 years, and let's see what happens next year.
Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback. Great stuff as always. Thanks, man, on late notice. We appreciate you stepping in.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.